Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to our news bulletin for tonight. We're jointly by my colleague here in the studio, Hiba Shadoud, and myself, Lama Sayes. On the occasion of winning presidential elections, President Bashar al-Assad received a congratulation cable from Sultan of Brunei Darussalam, Hassan al-Bolkiah. Sultan Bolkiah expresses wishes for Syria to continue its advancements and his desire to work with President al-Assad to develop cooperation and friendship ties between the two countries. Meanwhile, letters congratulating President al-Assad for his sweeping victory in presidential elections continued to pour in, with Lebanese and Palestinian prominent figures and parties sending him the congratulations. The letters stressed that the Syrians' massive turnout to polls represent futile attempts to fracture Syria and tear the Syrians' unity apart.
Deputy Chairman of Syrian Social Nationalist Party SSNP in Lebanon, Tawfiq Muhanna, stressed that the victory of President Bashar al-Assad with a sweeping majority of votes in the presidential elections constitutes a resounding triumph of the resistance project against the Zionist schemes. During a meeting with the Syrian ambassador in Lebanon, Ali Abdul Karim, Muhanna said that the Syrian people challenged the terrorist dangers and all Western threats and pressures, expressing their free will and choosing President al-Assad. Foreign and Expatriates Ministries sent two identical letters to Chairman of the UN Security Council and the UN Secretary General on the presidential elections which have been held recently in Syria. The ministry stressed in the letters that the presidential elections were held on June 3, 2014, based on the constitution of the Syrian Arab Republic and on the belief of the Syrians in the unity of their homeland and determinations to defend its independence. For the first time in Syria's history, these elections were held with a number of presidential candidates and in an atmosphere of competitiveness, equality and freedom pursuant to the law. The ministry added that the presidential elections were held in the presence of representatives from many countries, parliaments and non-governmental organizations with over 200 media outlets from various countries of the world and under the supervision of a judicial committee with subcommittees deployed in every Syrian province.
7 citizens were killed and 55 others got injured as a terrorist car bomb went off in Homs city. A source in Homs said that terrorists detonated a car bomb parked in Wadi al-Zahab neighborhood. The source said that the explosion killed 7 citizens and injured 55 others in addition to huge material damage. The Health Ministry is set to launch on Sunday a nationwide polio vaccination campaign with the aim to make Syria polio-free as it once was. The campaign lasts until June the 19th and targets children under 5 of age to have them vaccinated against polio. Assistant Health Minister Dr. Osama Sumaq, during a scientific symposium that the Health Ministry organized on the second stage of polio vaccination campaigns, stressed the importance of synchronizing efforts to ensure that every child is vaccinated against polio. Over to you, Hiba.
Minister of Social Affairs Kinda Ashamat said that international organizations are turning a blind eye to grave violations against the children of Syrian families dwelling in refugee camps outside Syria. Ashamat was speaking during a workshop co-organized with UNICEF, the United Nations Children's Fund, on the occasion of the World Day Against Child Labor. The minister stressed that the efforts must be intensified from ensuring that Syrian children in refugee camps are protected, especially that the humanitarian file should remain far from politicization. The Attorney General in Daraa said that 124 prisoners were released according to the Amnesty Decree number 22 for the year 2014. In the same context, the Attorney General of Deir ez-Zor said 31 prisoners were released according to the same decree.
On the occasion of Russia's National Day, Russian Ambassador in Damascus, Azamatullah Kul Muhammadu held a reception ceremony at Damascus Hotel in Damascus. The reception was attended by Vice President Najah al-Attar, Speaker of the People's Assembly, Muhammad Jihad al-Laham, Assistant Regional Secretary of Al-Ba'ath Party, Hilal, Minister of Presidential Affairs, Mansour Azam, Presidential Political and Media Advisor, Dr. Buthaina Shaban, and a number of Syrian senior officials. Homs Governor Talal Barazi stressed the important role of the citizens in the eastern countryside of Homs to preserve social spectrums and support the army in its war against terrorism. During the villages of Al-Thabitiyya, Hamad and Al-Harakiyya, which were affected by terrorist acts, Barazi said the government will pay compensations to the displaced families after the first assessment. Over to you, Iba.
Activities of the first Syrian Tourist Day kicked off in the Canadian city of Toronto. The 5-day event is organized by the Ministry of Tourism in cooperation with the Syrian Canadian Social Club. The director of the Tourism, Marketing and Circulation Department at the Ministry said that the event includes a photo exhibition which highlights the Syrian archaeological sites before and after the systematic demolition and at the hands of the armed terrorist groups. Greek Orthodox Archbishop of Sepastia Atallah Hanna greeted Syria, hailing the legendary steadfastness of the Syrian people in confronting the conspiracy that was aimed at dismembering the country. The Archbishop said during his meeting with the delegation from Ghajar village in the occupied Syrian Golan that the conspiracy was foiled thanks to the wise Syrian leadership and the unity of the Syrian people, renewing congratulations to the Syrian people for President al-Assad's winning a new presidential term.
Units of the armed forces carried out successful operations against the terrorist hideouts and gatherings across the country, inflicting heavy losses upon the terrorists. A military source said that army units targeted the terrorist gatherings and hideouts in Homs countryside, killing and injuring a number of terrorists and destroying their weaponry. The army units carried out operations against terrorist dens and gatherings in Damascus countryside, inflicting heavy losses upon them. Ma'lula, the history, reality and prosperities is an event that aims at shedding light on Ma'lula's civilization and what it presents for humanity historically and spiritually. The event aims also at documenting the incidents of what happened in the archaeological town due to the barbarian attacks of terrorists. And now over to our final item with my colleague Hiba.
Russia described the situation in Iraq as extremely sharp and tense after fighters from the Islamic State in Iraq and Asham ISIS al-Qaeda offshoot has been on the offensive, taking over 3 Iraqi cities, including Iraq's second largest, Mosul. Spokesman for the Russian Foreign Ministry Alexander Lukashevich said in a statement that Moscow condemns the terrorist designs to get entrenched in Iraq, Syria and other parts of the region.
And that's the end of our news bulletin for tonight. Thank you for kindly listening.
Damascus Radio presents Syrian Local Press Review.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Syrian newspapers published today highlighted the following headlines. President al-Assad receives congratulation cable from Sultan of Brunei Dar es Salaam on winning presidential elections. Lebanese and Palestinian figures and parties congratulate President al-Assad. Foreign Ministry, some states waged war against Syria's presidential elections in violations of democracy and human rights. People's Assembly re-elects Al-Ham as a speaker. Health Ministry launches Sunday week-long polio vaccination campaign. 155 prisoners released according to amnesty decree. Social Affairs Ministry laments apathy over grave violations against Syrian refugee children. Homs government to pay compensations to families in Homs countryside. Syrian Tourist Day kicks off in Toronto, Canada. Archbishop Hanna, legendary steadfastness of Syrian foils conspiracy. Documenting Malula antiquities and terrorist attacks on it viewed in event. Russia repeats firm confirmation or condemnation of extremist attacks in Iraq and Syria. Russian embassy in Damascus holds reception on Russian National Day. In its editorial, Thora newspaper said that the remarkably high turnout of the Syrians to cast their ballots in the recent presidential elections has dealt a blow to the enemies of Syria. The Daily added that it reflects the will of the Syrians and their insistence to fight terrorism and press ahead in foiling the conspiracy being hatched against the country. The paper pointed out that the elections have sent a strong message to the countries which are still conspiring against Syria, as the Syrians at home and abroad have spoken their mind despite enormous pressures and threats. The paper said it is surprising that some countries have brought themselves to criticize the presidential elections, knowing that they have never sent a ballot box on their wane or their own soil, especially Saudi Arabia and Qatar, which constitutes two of the most totalitarian and dictatorial regimes in the world. The Daily concluded that the elections have constituted a political and popular declaration of the failure of the war on Syria, and whoever wants a political resolution should stop all support to terrorists, indeed, not words. It is not enough for some countries to list Takfiri groups as terrorist groups, as there are some countries who have done so yet continue to support of them with up-to-date weapons to destroy Syria's infrastructure and kill innocent Syrians. The millions of Syrians who participated in the elections proved to those who wanted to divide Syria that they are capable of forging their future.
That was a review of the Syrian local press issued in Damascus this morning.
Radio Damascus presents Selected Readings. Written by Ma'moon Samra, and presented by me, Rayhan Faouri. this edition, you will be listening to World's Largest Recycled Materials Wall Painting Brings Joy to Syrians. Despite the tragic events and bad security situation that Syria is facing, beauty and culture are still having a place within the Syrians' minds. A group of 6 Syrian artists in Damascus has created the world's biggest mural made of recycled materials. Guinness World Records has declared the work as the world's largest mural made of recycled materials, which took about 6 months to complete and finished in January. Measuring 720 meters squares, this masterpiece was constructed from aluminum cans, broken mirrors, bicycle wheels and other scrap objects, and displayed on the wall of Nahla Zaidan and Bakri Qaddura schools in Mazzeh Highway. Muwaffaq Makhoul, the mural's leading artist and art teacher, told the press that the idea behind the project was to give the ordinary people a chance to experience art and relieve some of the pressures of daily life. In the difficult conditions that the country is going through, we wanted to give a smile to the people, joy to the children, and show people that the Syrian people love life, love beauty, and love creativity. This is what Muwaffaq Makhoul said. With this, ladies and gentlemen, we come to the end of our episode Selected Readings. Kindly join us again next week for a new episode of this weekly program. We wish you all the best from Radio Damascus, and a very good night to you all. Selected Readings. Written by Ma'moon Samra, and presented by me, Rayhan Faouri.
Damascus Radio presents Arab News Week. Produced and presented by Basim Bagdash. Directed by Hamdi Shweki. Speaker of the People's Assembly Mohammed Jihad al-Laham stressed that the persistence of the Syrian people to accomplish the presidential elections a few days ago, in spite of the threats voiced by the terrorists and their supporters and the attempts of some conspirators to disrupt the elections, is a victory for the brave people. Meeting head of the Foreign Relations Committee of the Belgian Parliament, Frank Krelman, and a number of Belgian journalists, al-Laham pointed out that the United States of America and some Western countries are always trying to disrupt the political life in Syria and stand against the aspirations of the Syrian people's legitimate aspirations of building a free and independent democratic state. He noted that the huge turnout to the ballot boxes on June the 3rd is a harsh blow to all conspirators, clarifying that the Western media is trying to mislead the international public opinion and expose the ongoing events to serve their countries. Al-Laham stressed that after more than 3 years of unjust war, the Syrian people is still capable of practicing their normal and ordinary life as the state institutions are working to provide their needs and requirements. The Foreign and Expatriates Ministry denounced the European Union's statement on Syria's recent presidential elections as a flagrant violation of the international law that provides for respecting the country's sovereignty and non-interference in their internal affairs. Even before the presidential voting took place, the European Union Commissioner for External Affairs, Catherine Ashton, described in a statement the election as illegitimate, anticipating the results in advance. She tried to get around the Syrian people's will by calling to resume negotiations away from the ballot boxes. While claiming that Syria's elections would affect the political efforts to find a solution to the crisis in the country, Ashton stopped short of referring to the violations committed by a number of countries banning a Syrian vote on their territories. This position of the European Union sits at odds with the simplest democratic rules and respecting the people's right to choose their leadership and draw their future through the ballot boxes, the ministry said in a statement. It affirmed that real legitimacy draws exclusively from the popular will and not from this or that country. The statement stressed the high voter turnout at home and abroad as the most telling evidence of this public bestowed legitimacy and the credibility of the electoral process, which was foreign delegations that observed the voting. The Iranian Shura Council said President al-Assad's landslide win in Syria's recent presidential vote and the high voter turnout have frustrated the enemy's plots in Syria as well as in the region. In a statement issued and signed by 230 Iranian members of parliament, the council described Syria's successful election as a show of the political capability of the Syrian government and people in the face of the U.S. and its allies in the region. Syrian presidential elections, the statement added, helped bolster the front of the countries backing peace in Syria and opposing war on it. The Iranian members of parliament reiterated that the crisis imposed on Syria has no other way to be solved than the political way, adding that the political solution should be based in the first place on the will of the Syrian people. They held the U.S. and its regional allies responsible for the world public opinion, for the war on Syria and the deaths of tens of thousands of the innocent Syrians since the crisis erupted in March 2011. The Iranian members of parliament asserted that the Syrian people's right to demanding damage claims from that countries or from the countries which have sent terrorists and weapons into Syria. You've been listening to a new edition of Arab Newsweek. Produced and presented by Bassem Bagdash. And directed by Hamdi Shweki. Damascus Radio presents News and Views.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. For more than 3 years, the Syrian people has shown a superpower and a strong will to face up and to confront the fiercest colonial attack ever known in history. During those 3 years, the Western colonial forces that have allied with the world Zionism, some Arab oppression and oil protectorate regimes have tried very hard to bring down the Syrian state, assuming that it can do that in a few months' time. Based on former experiments which it succeeded to bring down some regimes, the anti-Syrian alliance thought it could do the same thing with Syria through some effort, conspiracy, media fabrications and political lies, such as the mass destruction weapons case in Iraq. The strong will shown by the Syrian people, however, has foiled all the conspirators' plots and mixed all the cards and blown up all the conspirators' means, leaving them in a state of hysteria. The Syrian people was able to burn all the papers which the anti-Syrian alliance used in its crazy war in Syria, including that of the terrorist groups which it brought from all parts of the world. Through the presidential election's success, despite all the anti-Syrian alliance's attempts to distort this democratic experiment by all means possible, Syrian people have shown once again that no one ever can decide for the Syrian people except the Syrian people itself.
That was News and Views from Damascus Radio.